And if it's not one thing, it's another I forget to do on this show, but oh well. Welcome to the Ryder Brothers. Tonight we're going to start with a little bit of some pop culture news, probably something we might try to do every week just to cover the big stuff. Today specifically is for the Warhammer 40k fans, of which I'm kind of not. I've only played one game and it just wasn't enough to hook me at the time, but I do have a lot of respect for Henry Cavill. I've heard about all the drama that took place on the Witcher set and how much he was dedicated to keeping the show to the lore. And so that intrigues me, and I definitely am interested now in possibly diving into some Warhammer. So we brought our resident Warhammer expert, Mr. Corione, Witch in Residence, and why don't you go ahead and try to sell me on some Warhammer?
All right, so let's start a little bit with Henry Cavill's interest in this, because that'll tell you why you need to see this. To say that Henry Cavill is a Warhammer fan would be a gross understatement, okay? I have played against guys who I am very good friends with who actually live in Nottingham, England, where the game was initially created in. This dude plays in tournaments there. He puts on sunglasses, he puts on a ball cap, and tries to be a regular nerd to play in tournaments. And routinely, like all of us, loses, shakes the other dude's hand, says, "Hey man, great game. How the heck did you beat me?" Sits down, learns some new tactics, and comes back the next time even stronger. That's how good this guy is. Now, a little bit of the meta. Warhammer started as a tabletop game. They were originally printing models for D&D and went, hey, you know, we could build our own tabletop game using these miniatures in like an army builder kind of style of game. And they did. But then they started going, we really need lore for this game. So they created a fantastic universe. I'm going to go through a little bit of the universe now, just to whet your appetite, just a little bit. It is the 41st millennium, and the universe is in a continuous state of war. All right? Humanity expanded out into the stars. We had AIs serving our every whim. We turned out to be a fairly decent species out there. We were colonizing worlds. If we had a problem, we sent in our hordes of robotic servants.
So 40,000 years?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. We solved our problems with these robots, and then the robots turned on us, Terminator style. So now AI is banned by human use. We don't trust it. They're evil. Instead, what we do is we take convicts, we lobotomize them, and use them as computers. That's how metal this environment is already. But wait, it gets crazier. It turns out that the only way to go from point A to point B faster than light, for humanity anyway, is to open a portal to a dimension that kind of borders on ours called the warp. Now, before humanity and the Eldar, or the space elves basically, got on the scene, the warp was this kind of chill place where not a lot happened. But you see, here's the trick. Humans and some other species have this psychic impression they leave on the warp. So all of our insecurities, all of our fears, all of our negative emotions build up and eventually coalesce into beings. These are these god entities of what they call chaos now. There is a being dedicated solely towards the fear of sickness and plagues and disease, a keeper of secrets, and a god of war. That was the three of them at the beginning. But then the elves, who had basically had one of the very first empires out there, okay, after the original ones left, these guys started screwing around, literally, and didn't care about the ramifications of their actions. Just basically slept with anyone they wanted, did all the drugs, killed people because it was fun, that sort of thing, and created a fourth one, the god of pleasure. So now there are 4 chaos gods, and they exist purely to wreck everybody's stuff, because we wanted them to be that subconsciously. So there you have it. You have the Empire of Man, you have the Dominion of Chaos. Now, as this is going on, as everything is falling apart, one human being appears out of the sands of time, known as the Emperor of Mankind. He is a psychic power unlike the world has ever known. He unites humanity again by taking over Earth, and then creating 13 genetically engineered sons that are basically humans. He's owned armies of gigantic space marine to retake humanity's place in the cosmos. And then half of them fall to chaos and start worshiping the chaos gods and turn against their father. And in a climactic battle at Earth, the Emperor is critically wounded after a long protracted war, and he then sits on this life support system to basically keep him alive and keep him running the capability for humanity to operate. Well, that was 10,000 years ago. The Emperor is still barely alive on this throne. He doesn't speak. No one's seen him in ages. All right. Humanity is facing a war from traitors, from aliens, and because humanity started developing psychic powers, sometimes they get out of control. So there's so many humans now that there's mutants running around causing all kinds of problems. Humanity basically descended into a religious state where they worship the Emperor as a god, and anyone who doesn't worship the Emperor, they shoot. Sometimes twice, depending on whether they particularly dislike something. It's got so humanity's got this religion that's fanatically devoted to serving the Emperor and killing anything that even remotely resembles something the Emperor wouldn't like. You have the elves now that are a broken people. There are some that are good, there are some that are incredibly evil, and all of them are running around trying to reclaim their heritage. You have a species that makes the Zerg look kind of sad, that is designed purely to go out, consume all life on a planet, convert it into what they deem as biomass to fuel their species, and carry on exterminating everything it can get its hands on. You have a race older than the Space Elves that are basically alien Terminators that are running around, that fought a war against the Eldar's gods and basically didn't win. You have Space Orcs, which are literally just Space Orcs. There's no getting around it because they're just hilarious. And you have a couple of other smaller races running around, desperately trying to eke out their own little empires in this horde of crazy madness. Now, the thing about this is, the Warhammer universe has a little bit of something for everybody. You want crazy, fanatical, religious debates, they've got it. You want homicidal alien, you've got it. You want crazy, weird, spiritual stuff that you could spend forever diving into, you've got it. Because of the way the warp works, just because you go in there on a Sunday and you're supposed to come out on a Monday, doesn't mean you aren't going to come out 3 days before you left. In fact, there's a really awesome story where one of the bigger orcs, like orc bosses, goes through the warp, inadvertently comes back a couple of weeks before he left, tracks himself down, kills himself, so he can get a second version of his favorite gun. That's how messed up some of the fun stuff you can get into in this is. You have all of this, and in it primarily boils down to humanity is faced with enemies on all sides, and it is not looking like it is going to win. So at the core of this, you have really dedicated humans doing everything they can to eke out a survival for their species, willing to go any way they can to survive. And if that means, crushing a whole bunch of people under their boots, so much the better. Because really, at the end of the day, the only thing that humanity has in inexhaustible numbers is humans. Everything else can be, everything else is precious at this point. Technology doesn't advance as much anymore, if at all. Space is terrifying to transfer through. If you guys have seen Event Horizon, that's the warp. So when you go traveling faster than light, there are basically demons all around the outside of the ship trying to get in there and eat the soft, chewy center that is the humans on board the ship. Right? You have alien worshipping cults and just every kind of weirdness you can imagine. You have nuns armed with machine guns fighting aliens because they believe that their god wants them to. And if you haven't seen a nun running around with a machine gun in sexy power armor, man, you haven't lived.
Well, I would have to think on that. John, why don't you go first? Since, actually, before we get to that, Arende, hello, welcome. Arende writes in, aren't the GW armies ridiculously overpriced, and they refuse 3D printed minis? I don't know what he just said. But then also Relentless writes in, sup, Paka. Hey, sup, brother.
Okay, so to answer Arendi's question, Games Workshop has gotten very, very overpriced with their models. There is an absolutely huge debate out in the community right now whether 3D printing your own models is an okay solution to the overpricing problem. But I mean, at the end of the day, if people are paying the money for the models, GW will keep making the models at that price point. I mean, that's really what it boils down to. The only thing I can suggest is what my friends and I have done is we play what we're referring to as Fun Hammer, where we build, if we don't have a unit, we figure out a way to put it on the table in an inexpensive manner because we're not playing tournaments. We're playing against each other and we want to have fun. So that's what I recommend doing.
All right, John, what do you think?
You guys didn't go with War Fun? Because think hammer is not the main element of this game. I'm
Fair
super
enough.
hyped. I love anything where they put so much effort into the lore. Like, that's my favorite thing. Because to me, like, that's where the future of like spin-offs come from. That's how you guarantee that like people can build off of what you built, is you give them all the roadmap, like the blueprint in the lore, to show this is like the tone of the time. So then anyone who comes in, they can write their story, and you can be like, oh, I don't think that would happen. And they go, no, check, look, I did this. And you're like, what? That's a part of the game too now? It's like, yeah, because it is a tabletop. Like, there's a lot of that reading and room for evolved thinking. Like, just in the last 30 years, most people are more strategic than ever before in the history of the world, because like, we don't have to risk thinking about war and actually going. Instead, we get to play video games, and we get to play like simulations with our friends, and simulations with like
Simulated indulgence is best indulgence.
Well, not just simulated indulgence so much as simulated trial and error, where rather than the
that too.
War,
it can be used for
anything.
anything.
The cost of error is death. In this instance, the simulated trial and error is like, yeah, you failed. That's all it costs.
All right, Arende writes in, I looked into the Warhammer universe a few years back. Too dark for my taste. D&D at least has a balance of light and dark. Well, that's...
I feel like that's what you got to bring to the table then.
Maybe.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm definitely...
Well, here's what I would say. Here's what I would say, Arendi. I get where you're coming from, but take a look at the Tau Empire if you're looking for a little bit of a lighter story. They're one of the alien species trying to eke out their own survival, and their whole story is, out of all the dark evil factions there, they are probably the brightest light for the hope of the future. Their whole piece is they try to do what they can for the greater good. So
talk about a slippery slope.
Well, yes, they're basically space communists, but they're actually not terrible in terms of as factions go.
Well, that's always good. Yeah, I mean, I think, my next thing after I finally get my work done and get the audiobook for Galaxia re-recorded and out there is I'm gonna have to do Titanfall 2. Sorry, I was trying to remember. I got an early Christmas present from a friend of mine. Titanfall 2. Apparently the campaign's really good, so that's probably going to be, hopefully, my January project. And so after that, I guess I'll see what's going on. There's definitely a lot to get into with that one. Certainly, I thought KOTOR's lore was massive to fall through, but...
Well, Games Workshop's Black Library, which is their lore line, if you will, has currently the same number of novels written as the Star Wars universe. It's that deep lore. So, what I would recommend to most people, if you're looking for a game that's lore thick but not overburdensome with the lore, check out Warhammer 40k Space Marine. It's a solid action game where you're mostly running around murdering space orcs in the most fantastic way possible. As, one Space Marine, more or less, versus like 1,000 orcs at a time. So like murder and mayhem with sci-fi weapons, that's the way to go.
Yeah, no, I mean, it definitely sounds like it's up my alley. So I'm looking forward to probably getting into that, and we'll just watch the show, how it develops, and I think that pretty much covers it. Unless you got any last second things to add.
Yeah, the only other thing is, if you're like John and or Poyos Zapatos and you really like you're the lore dude, the book series you want to start with is the Horus Heresy. That's really where the universe's backstory is explained in decent detail, and it will give you the information on the most the equivalent of the World War I of the Warhammer 40k universe.
All right. Well, with that, we had a new show to grace our Tulsa King viewing this weekend, and that was the Yellowstone prequel, 1923. Now, if you haven't seen Yellowstone, you're in luck, because neither have I. And if you haven't seen 1883 either, I also haven't caught up with that one yet. Yes, I'm a little behind, but you know what? I saw Harrison Ford. I saw a bunch of other names attached to this property that I was like, 1923, might as well go take a look. And I also come to find out that, well, I may work at the place that shipped the tents. Who wants to do the play-by-play for this one? First episode overall was good in my opinion, but man, did it have some moments.
I'll leave it up to you, Corian.
Oh,
You guys are always better at that. I always like rush through it or skip over the most.
But you could just read
details.
the IMDb dissertation. Like, it doesn't all have to be unscripted here. We're not total. Not a single one of us has a certificate of improvisation, so. But,
I'll pull it up.
all right, so John's gonna get the IMDb up, which, I mean, that's one thing we should just really start a pre-flight checklist for this show now that we're, finally getting ourselves noticed.
Well, no, we want
But
them to know that we're real
at the same
people.
time, yeah, I know, we're also just real
This is a
people.
live show
This
with
is
live
always, yeah, by the way, this is always gonna be the Tuesday Night Live show. Like, even if we're in the same room, it's still probably gonna be just regular street clothes, jammies, whatever we feel like, because this is supposed to be your
okay,
hangout,
this is-
not
If you've
not a
been
lecture.
with us for all of the show, I have worn this shirt and then this combo for like 3 months now. This has been my uniform.
Yeah.
I won't show you guys my shorts, but
Yeah.
they're definitely Hoochie Daddy shorts.
Yeah.
Anyway,
I
1923, episode 1, season 1, opens. Jacob quashes a dispute between cattle ranchers and sheep herders. Kara informs Liz of the sacrifices of marrying into the Dutton family. Another Dutton finds himself far from home. So, none of that.
very
correct order
very
of
spoiler
events.
free.
Yeah.
And just like really heavily relying on what a Dutton is. Like, you have to be a Yellowstone expert to know that that name matters. And so let's start it the way it actually started.
Actually,
Another Dutton
I'm gonna
finds
counterpoint.
himself
I'm gonna
far
throw.
away
I'm gonna
from
counterpoint that real quick. You don't actually, because once they establish that Harrison Ford is a Dutton, I think that pretty much sets the tone entirely. At least that's what I took from it. Like, I
No,
know a
I'm
little
saying
bit
from
about
this,
Yellowstone,
like,
but
if you read this thing and you don't know what Dutton is and what a Dutton family member is,
the synopsis is weak. All right, I hear you.
just the fact that like they could have said being a cattle rancher's wife or marrying into a cattle ranching family, and instead they just said Dutton, like you knew that that name is associated with cattle ranching. Which, again, fair, because that's where the majority of their audience is coming from, but IMDb, you aren't there for the audience, you're there for the prospective audience.
Yeah. Well, okay, so we really have, in my opinion, about 3 stories going on right at the beginning, right? You have the Duttons on the ranch, which it turns out, locusts have gone through. The area is pretty, sparse in terms of grassland. The cattle ranchers realize that they have to get to farther northern, up in the mountains terrain in order to make sure that the cattle have feed. The sheep farmers are messing around with people to try to feed their sheep too. More or less, it's a mess a fight between the two of them, where the sheep farmers feel they should be allowed to go anywhere the heck they want, and the cattle farmers are saying, well, no, because if you do that, you're going to lawn mow all the food for our cattle. That's not going to happen. You have the second kind of plot line where you have one of the Duttons who, since this is post World War I, we see that he barely made it through World War I, and he's now running around in Africa as more or less a big game troubleshooter when lions and leopards and whatnot go after humans in camps in Africa.
He's a paid hunter.
Yeah, paid hunter.
That's not something that we have nowadays in most circles, but apparently it's still a thing.
Yeah.
Like especially like in Texas, a lot of hog farmers are just paid shooters.
Yeah, like I said, I like the idea of calling him a troubleshooter because there's trouble and he shoots it. All right.
Joke.
Yeah, well, there we go.
Love
right?
it.
And then we have a third story, which I don't know how it relates in quite yet, where we have this, what looks like Native American woman in a residential school dealing with the nuns and the priests.
It's confirmed that she is, I think, when they speak to each other in their not English.
Okay,
in their native tongue.
Yeah.
In that instance, and this is great, Corian, have you watched Yellowstone?
No, I have not.
Okay, so are you enthralled by all the stories off this first episode? Because I feel like you make a great character audience for this one. The fact that you don't know the lore.
I don't really know Yellowstone either. I'm pretty much in the same boat as Corian.
Yeah. So I'm going to say that, look, I can already tell you this one's going to be a little bit of a struggle for me because Westerns aren't usually my thing. Don't get me wrong, I don't think all Westerns are bad or anything. It's just not for me, right? So, Westerns
for the month of February. Got it.
Yeah, right. But it's, but so far it's been intriguing. I'm curious to see where they're going with it. I don't necessarily know where they are yet, but the residential school piece, look, I know you guys haven't been following too much of what's been going on up here, but that's a really big, scary deal as to what's going on up here with that.
I'm very informed.
Okay, yeah. And to add to it, guys, when I was a kid, I went to a Catholic grade school. I know exactly what those nuns are about. And that is roughly accurate as to every encounter I've ever had with a nun before. So,
well,
it's been a little bit of a challenge for me to get through this episode, not gonna lie.
Yeah, well, you know what? It's a nice reminder as to why these people should never hold any real power ever again. So
yeah.
I do appreciate you sitting through and watching it. I am never gonna make a fan or any panelist watch something unless I can give you a damn good reason. But yeah, at any time we need to pull the plug on anything, it's not totally unreasonable. But that said,
to Taylor Sheridan and his writing.
Yes. Why don't you go ahead and list? Yeah, go for it.
Step. So, due to complete just lack of reading the credits for anything, because that's just not what I do. I came to watch, not to read.
The Writer Brothers, we write and we watch. We do not read.
Except for when Corian asks us to read, and then we audiobook.
But I do bring up really good stuff for you guys. So
100%. Dude, I'm dyslexic AF.
I definitely need audiobooks too. Yeah.
But anyway, so I finally started noticing that the name Taylor Sheridan was appearing on all of our shows today because I watched them in a row. And I have realized that he's actually been writing a lot of fantastic screenplays, whether they're movies or TV. And this is there's a lot of talk in the corporate media and in the regular world about people not understanding the plight of their neighbors just because they aren't the same culture as their neighbors. And after looking up Taylor Sheridan's IMDb and finding out that he is exactly as white as I am, this is a testament to how willing he was to learn about the suffering of the Native American people. And he went into, in Yellowstone, he's in the modern day perspective, how the reservation versus the cattle ranchers versus the state works. And now, in 1923, instead of leaving the Native Americans out and just focusing on the Dutton family. He kept them and their story and their introduction into this new show is the most brutal mistreatment by a supposed loving authority figure. Pair of loving authority figures, and not just abuse in terms of like why did these young women hate this older sister, but then also like how can the sister be this evil, and we got all of it in their introduction, and normally you would think that like with the sensibilities of modern people, or not people, but the assumed sensibilities of the modern culture, this would not be like a written, and this wouldn't be allowed to be written, and instead like this guy's been greenlit for everything, and he continues to show the dark side of the like real world issues of a life that he understands, because apparently he's from Texas, so like he's been
well, I mean, he's freaking brilliant all around, because this show alone, one of the things that won me over were the just straight zingers in this episode and one-liners that we got right out of the gate. I mean, the the whole thing about the wedding. Well, if it was about the man, we'd spit and shake on it and you'd bend me over the first thing you could. I looked over at H. Marie and I go, that's basically what we did. I mean, it was very cost effective.
He's not supposed to be kissing her till the marriage. In my experience, it's best not to count the calendar between when the baby's born and the wedding.
Yes. Oh my God, I lost my shit on that one. That was like, it's best not
for
to.
The first time though,
not to be good at math.
Dad's reaction was exactly as you'd think a mature, honorable adult would feel like.
Yeah, and I mean,
like that's all he could do with it. He didn't like get any gruff about it. Didn't go fight anybody. He's just like, thanks for making me think about that.
Well, but I mean, like at the same time,
remembers when his daughter was born.
Yeah, well, like I'm willing to bet at the same time he's also remembering like his honeymoon phase, shall we say, and is going, yeah, I don't like it, but yeah, and these are the real genuine conversations, and that's one of the things I love about this show so far.
Yeah, he the way he like.
Yeah, hold on. I think I remember the line. I think I remember the line. It was like, yeah, look, when the first grandchild comes along, it's best not to try to be good at math or something.
Yeah, not to be good at math or have a calendar.
Or have a calendar nearby. That's right. Yes. Oh, that was beautiful.
But I love the other dad's like face, and not that Harrison Ford character's dad, because he's an uncle, he's an adopted dad.
Yeah.
But the other dad, his face was just like, I thought that thought, and I didn't want to have that. But instead of like taking it to the like childish degree, like he knows this kid, and he knows like who he's talking to. So like, and I love that they captured that. He's just like.
Yeah.
And just grunts it away.
Yeah, at the same time. Yeah, and at the same time too, you can also sit there imagining that what's also running through his head is, that was my experience too, right? Like.
Right. Well, that's what I mean. Is like he just combined his happiest moments, right? The times when he got married and conceived his daughter, and now his daughter's doing that with another boy, and he just had that thought of his daughter doing that. He's like, And it's like, that's what I mean by not getting mad, is he was forced to think about it in the gross way because of the conversation that he started. And he's still just, instead of being a butthead, which is normally what we get, especially from like old westerns, they're like, men couldn't at all keep their temper, and it's like, no, most of them did. That's why we're still alive.
Otherwise,
dude, they would have all killed each other.
I was gonna wait to bring this up, but I definitely think whether we do it next month or February, we should watch the Kevin Costner Wyatt Earp, because I mean, it's basically the anti-Western Western in a lot of ways, and it's one of my favorites too. So
I'd give that one a shot. My thing though is it's a shout out, or it's a testament to Taylor in his writing, that this show almost matches Yellowstone in pacing, in tone, in experience. All it is olden times. And that to me is like all I asked in my head as we were going into this, because I too cannot stand, like, I honestly just can't stand pre-cars. I love cars. And Yellowstone has a helicopter that's regularly used. Like, I love displays of extravagant wealth when, like, the characters have it. I hate when it's like, I'm a billionaire CEO, here's my one-room apartment.
Hey, you ain't gonna be a billionaire by spending all your money now.
That's fair, but, like, show me the cars then. Like,
You didn't get to be a billionaire by buying cars.
a car. Stop giving me this is my Ford.
You didn't get to be a billionaire by buying the expensive cars either.
I know. But, like, it's a movie. Like, let's pretend like they do have good taste. Like, I do know Mark Zuckerberg does wear the same gray hoodie every single day. So, like, that's a billionaire that does nothing with his money to some extent. But at the same time, I feel like if there was a movie about him, we'd at least see his to Hawaii at some point in there. And that to me is like, okay, extravagant wealth, because plane tickets are expensive, especially to Hawaii.
Yeah. I also liked how the bar scene and literal conference rooms look exactly the same as they did 99 years ago. I don't know if maybe that's literally a point in history where the aesthetic started to change, and I guess, I mean, the bar scene, of course, one could argue, well, clubs and whatnot, but I mean, they also have regular bars with clubs. I actually know a complex that's literally laid out like that. It's got a club right above the standard karaoke bar. So I was like, huh, that looks familiar.
Well,
but yeah.
I mean, let's be honest. After a certain point in history, we all figured out that certain layouts of buildings tend to work well. So let's stick with them.
Exactly. You know, wow. You know what? You're right, Corione. Right? Let's give a round of applause to humanity for actually sticking to one concept and not needing to change it. Unlike stuff in the military.
Let's blame monopolistic fast action carpentry programs that, like, Sears catalogs.
And let's save that discussion for the Rogue Council. All right. Anything else?
You could buy it from one store.
Anything else for 1923 before we move on to Tulsa King? Well, actually, I'm sorry, not Tulsa King. We have an ad break.
Well, I will say this: I'm really liking Harrison Ford's wife in this. The older lady. She's just got this, like, very matriarch kind of attitude where she's definitely caring, definitely. Oh, is it his sister?
That's the whole story at the start, and his sister wrote to him, and he came a year later to help, and he's been raising her kids for her.
Yeah, but they're but they're married.
Of chastity. I don't think they are.
Yeah, no, they're married.
No, she married his brother. I don't know if they got married now, but I know that he's like.
Well, okay, because
she's his sister by law.
Okay, because she brings up their marriage.
Oh, okay, so then yeah.
Right.
So he married his brother's sister, or his brother's wife.
Brother's wife, yeah.
Yeah, but I mean,
which is fine in that situation. Brother died. It's kind of.
The wife asked. Literally, that was the whole open letter at the start. Yeah,
she asked for his help, and
he came to take. Yeah, like, she asked for him to do this, and they did it, and it worked. Like, it was 100% mature and consensual, but at the same time, like, that was a weird bit about it. Is like, they're not his kids, but she is his former sister-in-law, now wife.
Yeah. Now, I will say that, like, I love her attitude throughout it. She's got this very matron attitude, and she can be as tough as nails, but then you see her with her prospective daughter-in-law, I want to say. Daughter-in-law. And she's kind and gentle and understanding, but still got that appropriate firmness for, the matron of a clan.
But also,
and I really like that.
Extremely expressive. She was like, "Do you know how free we are when they're gone for a month?"
Right?
Do you know how much like we get to do and control and run while they're busy beating their backs all day? Like we get to do whatever we want.
Yeah. Like, and
Yep.
when you think about it, it's true, right? I mean,
But like,
they get, these poor idiots are lying on the ground, with like cows to keep them company. And, they get the whole bedroom to themselves. They got enough food for as much as they want to do. Yeah. They got the castle most of the time. It's as lives go, it's not terrible.
The thing to me that's like really awesome though is like we rarely get that in terms of like why women get married. Like in a lot of movies they spend a lot of time explaining why a man should finally settle down, but like this was the perfect example of like if your person is doing something that takes them away from you, like it's hard to decide if that's right for you. But like if you don't care what you're doing with your life and you just want to follow them with theirs, like then do that and find your life along the way. And that's okay, because like the freedom, like make sure you're with somebody that allows you to be free to find your life. And that's what this, like that's what she was giving her, and not in a fantastical God will guide you on your journey through this marriage, just ask God for light. Instead it was like, no, like think about it, you have a month off. You have a month not cleaning up after his mud boots walking into the barn. You have a month of him not complaining about what you make for dinner. And there was that whole point, she's like, I'll go make dinner. And she's like, why? We're not looking for anybody.
Yeah.
You want a sandwich? And she's like, I can't do a sandwich. I need to make a soup. And I was like, that's my wife. That's exactly how she is as a person.
Yeah, no, but I also like though how much I got the impression that this is a very functioning, healthy couple because they're a team, and that was really my takeaway. Was
that's why I keep talking about the open letter. Is like they took the time to show us how consensual and how honest all of this setup is, and they let the woman do it. Like they didn't have Harrison Ford telling us all of this, because then you'd be like, I'm pretty sure she's in a loveless marriage because he's probably hanging out with the boys too much.
Yeah,
like,
see, I disagree
she's
because
the one telling. Well, no, because like if Harrison Ford told us the whole story, and we didn't get these examples of the women loving their lives, it'd be a lot harder to believe that she's having a good time. But when she's the one saying how great it is, it's like, oh, that's why people marry cattle ranchers. I would have never thought that would have been a thing. I would have never had that perspective without her expressing it.
Alrighty then. All right. Anything else with 1923 before we go to commercial?
No, I mean, I'm looking forward to the next couple of episodes. I want to give this like at least 3 or 4 episodes before I give any sort of full-on judgment on it. Like I really want to see where things are going, to try to understand what I'm supposed to be looking at here. Right? If that makes any sense.
It does, but I mean, I'm already interested in the characters and the struggle myself, but I see what you're saying.
I feel like that is exactly what you're supposed to do with a first episode. At the very least, your very skeptical audience is going to say, I need a little bit more. And it's like, well, that's why we haven't done a subscription service.
Yeah. Like I'm giving it to him. I'll say, you know what? You hooked me for at least 3 episodes. So there you go.
Yeah, definitely.
Which, isn't that funny? That's kind of what we said about Peripheral. And then by episode 2, we were like, nope, we're in.
This is the greatest show ever! Oh my god! Yeah. No.
And Tulsa King, too.
No, it was great. It was great. All right. Well, if you've been with this podcast long enough, you know that we are gainfully employed, so to speak, at least I am, by C&C Sutlery. Now, C&C Sutlery has all of your Civil War reenactment needs, ranging from uniforms to tents to supplies to just pretty much, like I said, anything you could ever possibly need. Now, you might be asking yourself why we would be sponsored by that, why we would have them on our channel. And well, as it turns out, they are the number one provider, or one of the main providers, for movie studios. And if you scroll down here to the credits, you can also find all the different regiments that meet up across the country for living history, which is a very important aspect. But if you continue to scroll down, you see a lot of our movie credits. We actually looks like some of our stuff was also used in National Treasure on Disney Plus, as well as the movie Babylon from Paramount Pictures and Emancipation on Apple TV. And it looks like I Heard the Bells as well. So yes, chcsutlery.com. Now, if you want to help support us directly, you can get yourself a handmade nightcap. All the proceeds go to my wife getting more business. So we do appreciate any and all support we can get here, and I'll put that there afterwards. All right, Tulsa King, episode 6. Who wants to give the rundown for that?
Actually, I just want to make a quick comment on my last thought, because I just realized that's a way to show how much we go into shows without bias. Like, we know what we don't like, right? Like, Corian and I both said we don't like Westerns, and so we were nervous that 1923 was going to be pretty, like, too cowboy and not enough, like, yeah, slog. And even with Tulsa King and even with Peripheral and, like, everything that we're like, this studio has not been trustworthy, so we're gonna try, and knowing what we know about it, and that's, to me, I think that's the thing that a lot of people aren't getting about bias, is like, it's not about not having bias, it's about knowing where yours is and giving it a chance anyways, and then judging yourself for judging it too harshly by its cover, because that's how you learn to fix your biases. But
So,
Tulsa King, Corian.
yeah. All right. So, Dwight is back in Tulsa after spending some time in New York and dealing with, how shall I put it, delivering a smackdown on the package.
Crushing the package.
Crushing the
Stomping
package,
the package.
Burning the package, no less.
It was like they were in the writer's room and they took a box and just did all kinds of things to it and were like, that's going in the show.
I like to think of this as a return to sender moment.
Yes. I was actually thinking, I'm really kind of tired on writers spying on me and watching what happens to my Amazon packages before they get delivered to me. But there we go.
Detective.
The character will be my pain.
He was the box in Ace Ventura: Pet Detective at the beginning.
Right. So he gets back and he finds out that the local biker gang that he's been kind of toying with is on the warpath based on him getting involved in the Nitrous game. Additionally, he finds out that the FBI has started getting involved in his business. And, we had some really great moments in this episode. Some really great moments. Everything from deciding that the best way to deal with this is to the hatchet in their pointy heads, to the, our poor little ATF agent flipping out because suddenly now everybody is involved, and she's trying desperately to deal with the fact that her boyfriend-ish, is getting involved in some really shady shit. And she's trying to keep the FBI out of it. We have our favorite horse from this series, Pilot, finally finding an appropriate home. And, the war advances. The first shots have been fired. And, I think we're now at the point where Dwight has officially decided that war has been declared.
War were declared. I'm looking forward to the rest of this. I mean, I've been looking forward to the rest of this series since we started it. Let's be honest. It's been just pretty much hands down some of the best television since the Peripheral. A lot of you know, the whole thing. I really like the whole relationship with Dwight and the pot shop owner this episode. That was very much a bonding moment of and some respect has been established there. And now some forced renovations for the bar, so I guess we're probably going to get a little bit of Roadhouse next week. And yeah, I mean, the show's going places I didn't think. But now, John, I think with what you brought up earlier about the writer being the same person from 1923 in Yellowstone, I really am now more convinced that Tulsa King is in the same universe. Because there's nothing that this show has indicated that it could somehow be different, and this could turn into, you know, something a bit more on the national scale, crossing state lines, and possibly, who knows.
I want that so bad, but I worry that the way this is being written is more like, no, these are just things that happened in Tulsa that I heard about. So not necessarily like writing it in terms of, well, this was going on the ranch, this was going on in Tulsa, and this was going on in New York. But I want it to be that. I really, really, really do. I want it to be just like casual crossovers, like tire gets like popped, and then the like cattle ranch, the Dutton farm, comes driving by down the highway and fixes the tire for him. And have a good one. You too, buddy.
That's honestly like what I was thinking. Like they bump into each other at a gas station in Nebraska or some shit, and then just leave it at that for a while.
Yeah. Oh, John, you were talking about a Warhammer? That
Thor
is a Warhammer.
That looks more like a Thor hammer.
Thor hammer.
Yeah, well, I mean, you know,
God, we're nerds.
this is the hammer that my friends lovingly refer to as subtle persuasion. You know, the joke being, of course, you can get more with a 25-pound limestone hammer and a kind word than you can with just a kind word. Which really seems to be Dwight's philosophy on how to deal with these bikers.
I think Dwight's philosophy is tried and true. Gangster steps on gangster, the bigger gangster wins every time. Mm-hmm. Like, everybody wants to be a gangster till they gotta do gangster things, and Dwight just got done doing 25 years for doing gangster things. It is like tattooed on his soul that he is a gangster. So for everybody else who hasn't done time, who hasn't suffered the consequences, like they still don't know if they can. And Dwight knows for a fact he can, did, and will again if he has to.
Yep.
Like, there's so much to Dwight's character that, like, I feel like we got out of this episode in terms of why he's not gonna change. Like, in a lot of shows we ask for character development, but for this one it's like, no, you got a gangster and you're gonna get one. But here is a gangster trying to be as honorable as he can be. Like, he's never gonna get a job. There's no way anybody's gonna hire a 25-year-old.
Stallone's character is what Boba Fett should have been.
Yeah.
Yeah. Exactly. Like, picture perfect representation. I feel like Boba Fett should have just been the Mandalorian, but they weren't sure if they could risk it. And so
but I like the Mandalorian as a separate character personally.
I love the Mandalorian as a separate character, but also, like, Boba Fett just never made sense as a Ronin. Like, he wasn't ever a samurai. He was always a bounty hunter.
Yeah.
So, like, I feel like if anything, he should have just started joining the Mandalorian, and they should have just been a team and called Boba Fett now.
Yeah.
Or the Mandalorians.
Well, and you know, I think I can't remember the guy's name or how to pronounce it properly off the top of my head, but the actor who plays Boba Fett thinks that he needs to be more gangster, I guess you could say. So yeah, but it clicked in my head. I'm like at the way John's describing it, I'm like, holy crap, this is what Boba Fett should have been. If you're gonna try and do an honorable gangster, like, this is a pretty good job.
I just don't think that, like, Disney had any faith in their writers because they're very executive, touchy, hands-on things. I don't think the executives thought any nuance was, like, gonna be okay, because what if we make it look like it's okay to be in a gang in all of our, you know, child audience? starts growing up with
yeah,
that
but
idea,
that's
which
why
is
we
just to
that's
make
why
Boba Fett the bad guy
but that's
again.
why we had that's why we had that conversation though with Stallone's character and his driver, where he's like, look, if you get into this is what you're gonna get. And you could have had that same moment with Boba Fett and, like, you know, one of the scooter gang kids like trying to get into his club, and he's like, dude, go back to your little Playmobil, all right? You know, unless if you're gonna get into this, like, no, this is life or death, not, oh, look at me, I got a colorful Power Rangers bike.
Well, and I think that, like, in the case of Dwight, like, we saw the honor that he's looking for in the moment with his daughter. Like, we get a lot of stories in film and just in life a lot that, like, people don't know how to handle someone close to them being sexually assaulted. And Dwight was the first on-screen character I've seen explain or get the chance to explain why he went as far as he went and why he's never gonna feel remorseful about it. And he said it in a way that I think a lot of people understand, in that there's a connection to your kid, you just don't get it. And it goes back to the 1923 thing. Like, that's what the dad saw, but it was with someone he knows who loves his daughter. But he's still his daughter. And so it's like, and that's what Dwight had, but it was the worst version of that.
Yeah,
And
but I mean, how about it though for this week? Like, two good examples of fatherhood, you know,
honest
just
masculinity.
really good. Yeah, just virtuous in a lot of ways. I mean, honestly,
and not just virtuous, but like seeking virtue. Like, he's not saying he's redeemed. He's not saying he was right. He's just saying, look, I know you want to take the L because I'm your dad and I did that for you, but you have to understand I also did that for me, for you, because I could never live with letting that man live. Because it will always haunt my dreams forever. And I went to jail for less. I've killed for substantially less. So if I suddenly let, like, nothing get in my way, then I can't live with that. And his daughter wasn't so much like, I get it, I forgive you, I love you now. She was still having her feelings like, why did you do something for me that I needed to do myself, because that's the only way I can still feel like an adult. And he...
Well, this is going to be a major game changer.
This isn't because of you. This is because you're my daughter and it's in our blood. Like, it is my blood.
Well, on top of that, this is going to have major ramifications for how this whole thing goes forward with the New York side of the mob here. Because, you know, they're sitting there going, well, now this is the second made man that, you know, Dwight has decided needed to get some meted out justice on. You know, how many times, like, if he comes up to New York again, who's going to be the next one to get smacked?
And that was, to me, like, that's something I've always thought of. Like, I don't have a huge problem with the idea of people being gangsters as long as they do have a line. And that was, like, what the Don was saying he had. But obviously he had never enforced it. And his son had never thought that it was necessary to enforce. And, like, the biggest thing that I feel like the Don understands but can't really fix because of his ego and pride, and his son doesn't understand and won't try to understand because of his ego and pride, is that, like, Dwight was quiet. Dwight never narked. Dwight could have put the Don in prison for life, RICO'd the entire mafia. And he kept his mouth shut, and his daughter was mistreated by his gang.
Yeah.
And
yeah, I mean, we'll just ask
where,
our,
like,
our
that's
resident...
the part that they're not, like, getting clear and pushing forward, and I hate that they're not... Like, I hate that they don't get it, but I love that this show is willing to show men be so ignorant. Well,
all right, let's ask. Let's quickly
life.
poll our resident dads, which is not including me. John, you don't have a daughter, but do you feel, and let's just make clear, because we live in this era, so I'm just going to throw this disclaimer. This broadcast is not a court of law, nor is it an admission to anything at all. It's just hypothetical. John, would you do any differently than Stallone's character?
Substantially. But that's just
okay.
because I'm a Marine.
Okay, different how?
I believe in the Blood Eagle. When it comes to anybody who commits sexual abuse, especially rape, Blood Eagle is the only appropriate treatment for them. And I'm not going to go into detail what that is if you care to.
Yeah, and I'm all going to Google that, not on stream, so.
Play Valhalla.
I don't know.
Assassin's Creed Valhalla, you get to do a couple.
I don't know. I kind of want you to Google it while I can watch your face.
We can do that after the stream. I could Google it right when we're done with broadcast. All right. Yeah, we don't do blue waffles on this channel. Corione, you actually do have a daughter. What is your what is your feelings regarding Stallone?
I don't think I would have done it the way he did it. I think that were somebody to do something akin like that to my daughter, he would find himself on the business end of a highly improbable accident that could in no way be traced back to me. That would be purely coincidental to the situation for legal purposes.
I mean, you got friends too, just saying.
Well, I appreciate that. But, you know, I like I said, I prefer the term convenient accident. You know, especially when, you know, it's quite clear that I was at the movies the whole time. You know, just for, you know, certain alibi style purposes. But yeah, I don't think there is a parent that would be okay with that happening to their kid. And while, you know, we do live in a society of laws, and we are supposed to respect those laws, there are certain times when a father feels the need to mete out justice. And I think that's the best way to put it.
Let's call it for what it is. There is no faith in local law enforcement to handle rape. Like, those stats are way in. They have never.
Their job is not to investigate crimes. It's just to enforce the law.
And the law as they see it when they see it.
Right, and that's the problem, is the law doesn't function for the people these days, and that we need to do several things about. Well,
and that's why there's that case with the gentleman in Texas who did this real thing in real life, and the law in Texas was like, yeah.
No, the prosecution dropped the charges. The law didn't protect him. It was the prosecution, when they heard the story, realized that
that's the law.
And they probably did it.
The thing about it is because the law is all of these people, because that's what it means when we say a government of the people, by the people, and for the people. It's all the people in government that swear the oath and then betray the oath. They swear to protect and defend, and then they do no protecting, no defending after the fact, no defending before the fact, no education in school. Like that, you swore an oath. You put your honor on the line, and years of statistical data shows that you have failed. Own it. Fix yourself, be better, but don't pretend like it's not true.
And I'm also going to say this, right? You know, the amount of time between Dwight finding out and Dwight going and beating this man in the most efficient and brutal ways he could possibly come up with at the time was very, very little, right? There is laws on the books that have a tendency to protect people when they are made aware of something like this and just snap because they can't deal with it.
There's 7 degrees of murder for a reason.
Yeah. Right.
The worst being premeditated. In the case of Dwight, is it really murder if he's a murderous gangster and also technically had a chance to fight back? Dwight didn't shoot him in the knees. Dwight didn't shoot him in the head. Dwight punched him. He was just weaker than Dwight.
Well, and the thing is, the other thing is too, like so for me,
Like,
when my
that's even closer to manslaughter than murder.
So for me, like, I think I agree it's 100% justified, because in this instance, I don't look at criminal situations just from, oh, this guy hurt just me. The thing about rapists is that if they done it once and got away, they usually try to go again and again and again. And so it's not, for me in that situation, I would be like, yeah, I'm ready to get some fatherly vengeance, but I'm also doing this for all the other fathers in the process. And that's really what it comes down to for me. So he's not just, taking vengeance here. He's removing a legitimate threat to the community that needed to be removed after that first
incident. Was the only one that was ever going to do it, because the Dawn didn't do it. The new Dawn that's coming up would have never done it and didn't care to do it. And then also, they're protected by their Dons from the police, so the police wouldn't have even had the chance to get involved, because the police aren't good at handling the mafia either.
Because they're owned by the mafia usually.
Now, I will point this out though. The old Don, upon realizing, like, putting all the pieces together as to what happened, basically backed Dwight and said, yeah, he was totally justified in what he did.
Nope. That's the problem, is he didn't. He just so like multiple times he was asked, we have to handle Dwight, and he was like, why? And he was like, he disrespected us. Like, he could have in that instance said, he didn't disrespect us, he got rid of a cancer that you, a leader, are supposed to get rid of, and you didn't. And instead Dwight did it for you, so you should be paying him as a gift of thanks. And instead he was just like, he kind of killed one of our guys, and that's not allowed. Like that, he was very weak in his defense of Dwight.
Well,
and I think that lack of defense is what's gonna lead to the ultimate, like, tension of the young Don and trying to actually fight Dwight.
You know what I can see happening?
All in this, like, culmination of ATF, FBI, biker gangs, and now this Don.
No, okay, guys, I've got it. I know how this series is gonna, this season is gonna end. Are you all ready? I figured it out. All right. The New York mob is gonna finally decide to do something about Dwight. Okay? The bikers are going to have enough of Dwight's antics and decide to do something about Dwight. And at the same time, Dwight will have played off the FBI and the ATF to be involved at just the right moment. So when the anarchy-gasm descends upon Tulsa, Dwight and his crew are sitting back watching as all of Dwight's enemies simultaneously deal with each other. And he winds up sitting at the end on his throne as the king.
That's a good prediction. I don't think I have anything to really counter or go along with that, to be perfectly honest.
I have a feeling that, like, yeah, he is setting up the Kansas City Wall Street of the mafia and just moving the whole thing to Tulsa, because once these two are gone, because I really think the way it's going to go is the son's going to kill the dad. Because every single time the dad Don is in any scene, I'm just waiting for him to go and just die. Because, like, that's why they put a dying Don in there. So you're constantly waiting for the episode where this new yuck that has all ego and no intelligence take over, and we're waiting for it. And, like, I feel like they know that they're teasing us, and I said they, but, like, Tyler's, yeah, he co-wrote this one. So that, yeah, the writers on this one, they know what they're doing, and also at the same time I feel like they could keep it all alive, and this tension could be what sparks the growth in the Tulsa King. By the end of the season, he's finally got his, like, everybody's set their borders, but nobody's gone to war just yet, and the FBI is closing in on all of them, and that's where we're gonna get, like, teased for season 2.
Okay.
That's the way I'm reading it, because they know what they're doing with that sick dad. I feel like he's just every episode last leg. I thought he was gonna die when Dwight punched the one dude in the first episode.
Fair enough.
But no, I there's so much with this show that's this like I can't figure out if the girlfriend ATF agent is actually dealing with a moral dilemma or a logistical dilemma about her pension. She's like, I'm 2 years away. I'm already in the ATF Siberia. This should have been a lot easier. And give me 2 years and I'll be on your team. But like help keep it cool for 2 years. That's kind of like the vibe I'm getting from her. She's not really, she's you know, statistical data that's on their way out the door, so they're gonna lame duck period for a lot longer because pensions and stuff like that. And that's why the statistics show that law enforcement aren't doing their jobs, because they keep people that don't do their jobs.
Well, I actually think that the way her story is going to wind up ending is they're going to have enough to be able to put her and Dwight in the same room, but not enough to specifically identify what's going on there. So they're going to offer her her pension early just to get her out. And then she's going to wind up with Dwight full time.
Yeah, she does not seem to want to be at work. She's
No.
drunk at a meeting with an informant. That's pretty clear sign of let's not make this day worth writing about.
Well, the A in ATF does stand for alcohol, so I guess she's, you know.
Properly raised.
Yeah. No.
Or
If she was-
you know, as I like to call them, what they really are, the American totalitarian force. So,
I just figured they were the American Boredom Patrol.
that's all the three-letter boys. They have nothing better to do except, you know, keep us living in perpetual fear and rooting for them the entire time.
Yeah.
All right.
I
Well,
always
speaking
believed
of
that
destroying
these were
fear,
writers.
we have sadly come to the end of the Lord of the Rings journey. Guys, I do just want to say this was actually a lot of fun. I'm really glad we did this 1 week at a time because it actually gave me, you know, I always thought that I would only ever watch these in sequence and marathon them all the time, but really it was nice to just have those week-long breaks in between to really just digest it and really just re-experience Lord of the Rings, but also kind of in a different way for the first time. And yeah, like I said, the reason Two Towers is my favorite is because it was like there was another one coming, and then once this one came out, it was like, wow, the 3 years is over. Amazing. So, I'm sure we don't need to do a synopsis for this movie. Plus,
No.
I mean, we covered the extended edition, which is over 4 hours long. Yeah, I could never do these in a theater again. I heard the new Avatar's 3 hours long, and I'm like, yeah, I'm gonna watch it when I know I can pause in the middle and, you know, use a bathroom like a normal person.
I've heard you
Yeah,
did a lot
yeah,
of,
but I mean,
scenic
it was
scenes.
good. I did enjoy it.
Sorry, John, you kind of
It's
cut out.
pretty, and it had some.
Oh, I was just saying, I heard there was a lot of scenic scenes of nothingness. It's a solid, like, 1 hour chunk of time to get up and pee.
No, there's okay. Look, there's a lot of pretty scenes. There is a deep plot. There is, you know, piece on anti-whaling stuff, but at the end of the day, what it really is about is a family dealing with their way of life changing.
I will say your synopsis on Sunday is the only positive one from people that I consider like writers worth listening to. But I know your word is worth more than theirs to mine because I know where it comes from and where it's been.
Oh, thank you.
So I am gonna watch it, but I think I am still with Parker on and I'm gonna give it the honor it's due because the way you put it with the whole elements thing, I love, like I said, I love lore, and so I understand that sometimes people are gonna take a lot longer to like show it off in some ways. My only concern with James Cameron is I think he likes to do it with the camera and with the effects more than he likes to do it with the words. And then it's like, I need somebody like you to come in and show me that it's working.
Yeah, no, it like honestly, look, I know, okay, I can only give you my perspective, right? I cannot give you the perspective of, say, the Drinker or Doomcock or any of the other guys. So I can only tell you what I'm seeing from it. And what I'm seeing from this is it's very, very similar to okay. This isn't really spilling the tea, but here we go. Okay. When you have young witches studying to get to move on to their degrees, when they become part of the Covenant, actually earn the title of witch, there is a journey that they take through each of the 5 elements. Okay. So for example, for water, I went scuba diving and was literally in the beauty of water, right? And got to hang out with the pretty fish, got to see the treasures of the deep, all of that, and got to experience it and feel it in a very intuitive and visceral way. And then, we move on to air, we move on to fire, we move on to earth, and we move on to the 5th element. All of that is what I'm seeing happening here. Okay? If you have that context for what's going on in the Avatar cycle, it's a worthwhile series to watch. If you don't have that, I can totally see why a lot of people were like, I don't get it, it's a James Cameron vanity project kind of thing.
So then my recommendation on top of that would be if you do trust our recommendations, and you haven't seen it yet, Avatar: The Last Airbender is a must, because when you were talking about it on your video,
the M. Night
that
Shyamalan
was
one. It's the only good one.
No. No, we don't talk about that. Boot him. Yeah.
So I just started Legend of Korra, and it's a continuation. All right, I'm good. Don't ever fucking say that again.
The best joke I've ever timed in my entire life. Mostly just because I've heard a lot of people try to do something similar. And I kept a straight face. I've never seen that movie. Because
I'm not going to. I tried. I got 20 minutes in, and I was like, this is awful. And the arrogance that Shyamalan had. Okay, this is going to turn into a rant. Nope.
Yeah,
stop. I'll stop.
Let's carry on.
All right, but to finish my point about watching Last Airbender, about watching The Last Airbender, the TV series, the only thing related to. Okay, am I peeking here or something? What's going on?
Yeah, we're getting weird.
We're getting some noise. All right. Yeah, the only thing, yes, watch the original cartoon. It's a great series. It's tight. It's solid. Everything is explained throughout. And yeah, it's totally worth it. And yes, it goes along with what Corio's saying about that's what Cameron's doing with his series, going through all the elements. I really thought, after watching it very recently again, I cannot believe that show has no right to be as good as this. Now, a little preface to understand, it's about the I would say it's an all ages, family friendly show. It does kind of lean a little bit more in the kids section, so it's definitely good for any of you families watching that have younger kids. This I would totally recommend. Wholesome television all around. Gets a little. What would you say, Corion? You're a dad. Do you give it dad safe rating?
Oh, listen. When my kid was 6, we sat down as a family and watched it because we felt it was that important for our kid to see good role models on TV. Right? If that isn't the kind of recommendation, I don't know what else you can offer. Right?
Yeah. Yeah, and I just started Korra for the first time, and I'm enjoying it. That first season was very, very good, very well written.
Yeah. All right, but getting on to Return of the King. I mean, we have our own cycle here, though, right? We have the end of the journey, right? And whoa, what's going on?
Keep going. I think I found the source of the noise. Maybe.
Okay. So yeah,
yeah, it's your signal's degraded.
Yeah, so, but no, we have, with Return of the King, we have the end of the journey, right? And trying to show that not only is this the end of this great journey, but it's the beginning of the next great journey. Because we feel like we are getting endings, but we are also seeing where possible beginnings will carry on from, right? We know that, you know, people are transitioning into who they're meant to be, right? We see Sam live up to be the hero that we all wanted him to be. We see, right, we see Aragorn become the king he was meant to be, right? We see Gimli and Legolas become the friends that they always should have been, right? And at the end, that line of, I never thought I'd be standing standing side by side with an elf at the end. And the elf says, well, how about a really good friend? And he's like, yeah, I could do that, right? And that's kind of what we get, is we've watched them all grow into the people that we knew they were capable of being, the promise we had of them being in the first movie. And it's come true now, right? We've seen all of them grow, the hobbits most of all, right? Each of the hobbits went on their own real deep journey of personal growth along the way of their journey. And now we're seeing that, right? These are awesome lessons and awesome ways to show how the journey changed them, and that because of that change, there's no going back, which is the core of the hero's journey, is that at the end, they can't go back to where they came from because they've changed. The journey changed them. And it changed them in beautiful and sometimes hard ways, right? You know, we know that Frodo is never really going to be happy in Hobbiton again, right? We know that, Sam is now just happy to, he's done. He's had his adventure. He's had his great experience, and now he's just looking to settle down with that beautiful barmaid and have a mess of kids and live a good life, right? We know that Gandalf isn't going to be allowed to stay in the realms of men any longer because his job is done, right? The problem that he was sent to go deal with is dealt with now, right? We have that kind of finish that we were hoping everyone would get to, and they do get there, right? Even in a lot of ways, we get Boromir's story redeemed through the actions of his brother, right? We get to see his character, the dream that his character had of Aragorn returning and being the king fulfilled in a lot of ways, right? And we see Aragorn take up the mantle and realize even that this mantle is hard, right? It's he turned his back on this because he was terrified of what it would turn him into, but he realized he had to do it. And that level of sacrifice of, he's putting away, for lack of a better term, childish things and becoming the man that they needed him to be, the king, right? In fact, if I remember correctly, I think somebody, when they hand him the reforged Narsil, he's, they say,
Induriel.
Become the king, in Induriel, yeah, says, become the king you're meant to be, right? Like, it's time. And I feel like that really could sum up the entire last chapter of this, right? It's time for you all to become the people that you were meant to be. And we see how wonderful it is when they are. Right?
Yeah, there's a lot that there's a lot that watching this series again, now that we have, like, we kind of have a lot of shows that touch the moral gray area. It's like, where is that in this series? And I realized that it's not, the orcs are definitely, an army that's for the sake of evil and that's thereof. And really that's supposed to represent a lot of Tolkien's nightmares and a lot of the hellscape that he went through in World War I. I mean, in the Great War, your enemy pretty much was a faceless, murdering psychopath coming to kill you. That's what he fought against. So I noticed that the gray area is actually with the race of man, because you have different factions of men that turn against the rest of the men, and that's supposed to be representative of those other people that do decide to side with the evil, unfortunately. And there's a lot of, but we also see redemption from men who betrayed their posts and before, now using their ghostly powers for good to redeem their honor. And so all of the themes are still strong and still solid. And the movie holds up for so many more reasons than just the great story. I mean, the model shots, still fantastic. I know some people like to knock the coming to Minas Tirith theme. It's Minas Tirith scene. And I was watching it this time going, no, that's necessary to establish the immensity of the city. Like, imagine a movie takes place in New York, and you're supposed to get New York to just feel big and massive. And you show a picture of your main character flying in on the airplane, and then they go right to their hotel room, and then they go to their meeting, and then they fly out. And you don't see any establishing shots of the city, nothing. That doesn't work. So as the establishing shots, while it is very glorious and just, wow, here it is. This is the sort of allegory of America right here. It's grand, it's awesome, it's kick-ass, and it's huge. And I think that's really what those shots do a great job. And that's Jackson's brilliance that came into play with all of that. He does the story, he does it justice. I know he changed some of the things, and the last battle is more of, I like that the last battle isn't that huge epic thing that Tolkien wrote. I like that they did that with Pelennor Fields, because it just shows that, no, we're not really here to win. We're just kind of here to buy some time. If
this is a holding action.
Exactly.
Yeah.
We could all die and get slaughtered. It's great. Arende writes in, you see, he doesn't want to do it as he gets crowned. Wonderfully acted by Vigo. Yeah.
Yeah. But he also knows that he has to, right?
Yeah.
And that's part of the beauty of, I think, the story is that, everybody puts duty first now, right? I mean, there's an argument to be said that your childhood ends when you put duty before, you put duty before fun, right? That's when it ends. And I think that is a excellent way to look at Vigo's character, given how long-lived the high men are, right? This is kind of the end of childhood for him.
Yeah, no, that makes perfect sense. Absolutely. So yeah, it's and of course the soundtrack is still strong and just a lot of just very good moments, heroic moments from most everybody, a lot of redeeming moments, and I mean, we also see that, the corrupt, angry, depressed dad takes himself out of the picture. It's Arende writes in Numenorians.
Yeah, I mean, they use high men and Numenorians kind of interchangeably in the Silmarillion, so that's why I got stuck with it.
Yeah, definitely.
My frustration with the idea that the dad took himself out of the picture, that's, to me, it wasn't that the dad was taking himself out of the picture because his son was dying. It's like he hated his son Faramir because Faramir represented him, the weaker of the siblings, the smaller of the siblings, and Faramir still kicked butt. One of the greatest characters.
Yeah, no. If Amazon was smart, they would have given us Lord of the Rings, a Faramir story, and Lord of the Rings, an Éomer story. Like those are characters that I think we could probably explore a bit more of, both pre-LotR and post.
Yeah, and for them, like, for the father, though, like, the reason he was lighting himself on fire is because he was a coward the whole time. He hated Faramir because he was afraid that Faramir was the same coward he was, because Faramir kept messing up. Even though he was being overwhelmed and outrun by an enemy that was just insane. And his brother was like it's like if your brother's Hercules. It's like, yeah, he's winning. But like I'm also like holding out. We only had like 2% death rate, and that's pretty good in the normal. Like if you look at all the other generals, the average is like 77%. And I'm doing bad compared to Hercules. Oof. But the dad was such a coward that he believed that his cowardice had infected his son, and so he treated his son like he was a coward. And his son grew up feeling like he was a coward, but also like wasn't, and knew he wasn't, and continued to prove he wasn't. And to me, like, the father didn't off himself. The father attempted to sacrifice himself to honor his son, who he actually did love. He just mistreated his entire life. And in his arrogance to honor, his arrogance of supposed honor, he lit himself on fire like an idiot. And rather than knowing the number one rule of being lit on fire, which is stop, drop, and roll, he ran as fast as he could on the tallest tower. Like,
but
I
also
don't
it was
think
a
of
pretty
him
metal
as,
visual, though, right? I mean,
oh,
come
it's
on.
fantastic. It's what the guy deserved, a coward's death, for sure.
Exactly.
But, like, let's not pretend like he had any sense of morality or a lack of self-preservation. He was like, either I'm gonna die by the orcs, or I'm gonna light myself on fire in an appeal to honor the gods, right? And instead, he was the only one lit on fire, because, like, that's what cowards do. They make the worst possible choices and claim it's out of honor.
Well,
and
I mean,
I love that was what was shown to us.
I mean, okay, in defense of him as much as I possibly can. Look, people make bad choices when they're mad, scared, or stressed, and he's all three, right? You got to figure that he's been in a protracted war against, you know, the orc horde now for probably well over a year, and he's been watching his territory slowly crumble, right? At the very
They were
least,
at war at the beginning of the journey. Wasn't the journey like 3 or 5 years?
yeah. Well, okay, so then let's go with 5 years, right? 5
Yeah.
years constant war
And
against
the enemy's
these.
getting bigger.
Yeah, and like every time a fight happens, he loses like half his number, and the orcs may have lost, 90% of their team, but then they just replace those numbers the next day and come back even stronger. He's losing a very serious war of attrition, and there's nothing he can do about it. And anytime he tries to do anything to try to sort things out, he definitely feels like he's on his own, right? So I do get that he's making poor decisions because of grief. He's making poor decisions because of stress. He's making poor decisions because he just doesn't have the upbringing to properly make those decisions.
Right.
I'm not making excuses, but I'm also saying that there's more to it.
He's always made those decisions. Because, and it's, fortunately, it's like, it's not headcanon. It's given to us throughout the story. Like, he's always disrespected Faramir. And like, proselytized Boromir. And that's the sign of a bad leader right out the gate. So if that's how you raise your kids, imagine how you raise your armies, how you raise your city, how you raise your people. And in his, and this is why I say he was a coward the entire time, he never took the throne. He was of the line of the last hand of the king, and he is still the hand. And that's his excuse for being bad. And that to me is like the coward's excuse. Like, no, you're bad because you won't educate yourself, because you let ego, pride, gluttony get in the way. And I feel like Jackson and Tolkien in the writing, but also like Jackson really did a fantastic job of showing us who this person is. He's the epitome of like what we think of when we think of the elite, especially the generational wealth elite. Like, I know how to rule this city because I was born to rule this city. Oh no, it's crumbling. Let me honor the gods and hopefully the gods will save us, rather than me finding a leadership logistical plan to logically find a way through, out of, or around this issue. And instead, I'll light myself on fire.
Yeah, I mean, like, look, I agree with you that he's just a terrible human being.
But I'm saying that the movie took the time to show us that terribleness,
yeah, is legit.
Isn't always like he wasn't mean to everybody.
No.
And he wasn't ignoble. Like he was still a nobleman, but he definitely was a coward.
Yeah.
And there was so much of that in this movie showing.
Yeah, I guess to me, my look at him is, I don't, I'm not upset with him. It's more I pity him. If that makes any sense, right? I pity him that he wasn't strong enough to live up to the obligations of his office. I pity him that he was not strong enough to live up to his obligations as a father, right? And more, I pity his kingdom for lacking the wisdom to realize that he was not the leader they needed right then and there. And the fact that, I mean, multiple times Gandalf basically had to pull an end run on him to get shit done and get everyone into the fight speaks to Gandalf going, okay, no, I've had enough of this guy. I am just going to get this work. I'm just going to get this job done. Which, kudos to Gandalf for realizing, no, I've got to pull this together because this guy's clearly not going to. Right? I mean, how often have we seen that in real life where somebody goes, all right, you know what, this guy's just not getting it. It's time somebody does, so I'm going to pull an end run on him.
Well, to me, that's like Gandalf recognizing his position. Like, as far as wizards go, they are always peers to the highest advisor of the king.
Yep.
And not necessarily like as a rule of thumb, but generally, that's especially like a wizard at Gandalf's level. He's got all the magic. He knows all the magic. He's not like, oh, I can just sleight of hand a little bit. I'm now going to talk to the king whenever I want, or I'm really
good with the yo-yo. I can,
go.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Instead, like he was like, no, you're the hand of Gondor, and that is a very honorable position, and the title bears respect. And for that, I will tell you that you need to do something. You're not going to do it? Well, I'll get it done, and if you claim credit, I don't care, but it's getting done.
Yeah, the job's getting done.
That's my job. My job is to make the peace happen as a wizard. I just let you know so you could start the process if you wanted to as an adult.
Yeah, I 100% felt like it was like, you've served in the military long enough. You ever notice how the most senior sergeant always gets stuck with like the second lieutenant who just got out of West Point, and thinks they know everything? There's a reason why they always put the most experienced sergeant with that guy, and that's his babysitter.
They used to do that. Nowadays, it's so much more corporate, and so sometimes you'll just get two of those guys. The least experienced sergeant, so he's got all the money, like all the power, none of the wisdom, and then you'll get the fresh boot, and together they'll collude.
Oh,
and
boy.
It is the equivalent of Grima Wormtongue and Sauron. There you go. There's a perfect equivalence of like who this guy is. Like basically they were the two films paint that the hand is usually the thief.
Yep. Oh, you right there?
I'm sorry. I'm getting attacked by Siri.
Oh, okay.
Let me see am I back?
Yeah, you're back. You're good.
Okay. So the way that like Gandalf handled Grima Wormtongue versus Saruman handled Grima Wormtongue, it's that the parallels of like the right way to do it, which is, sir, you need to rally your armies and prepare for war, and save these people that are running, or retreating. And the Grima Wormtongue version in this one goes, yeah. And that's it. Like, he doesn't do anything more. And so Gandalf's like, all right, gotta go to war. Whereas Saruman's like, oh, let me bribe this man. Let me sweeten him and convince him to do it. And then now we control the king. And now I control him and the king. And my power rises. And Gandalf's like, yeah, you are a wizard, bro. Like, you have all the power. Why are you pretending like you need societal authority? Like, why would you even want that? You want to be a manager with all that wizard power?
Yeah,
And,
right?
that's what Gandalf's representing. Like, he never takes charge, never takes lead, except for in this movie. Like, he's like, when it needs, all right, damn, no other leaders? Not a single one of you knights. None of you guys are going to stand up for me. None of you guys are going to rally? Seriously, not one.
Yeah, it feels like he
All
really
right,
had to roll up his wizard sleeves and get into it this time, right?
Well, and he did. What did he do? That's why he brought a hobbit with him. He was like, I might need somebody to, sneak a sneak.
That's it.
It's like
he was always prepared, but also tried to push the other way. Whereas like Sauron was like, I run into a wall, let me connive that wall into my, like, bend that wall to my power, bend that wall to my power, bend that wall to my power. Why is everybody bending over? Oh, because I never taught anybody to lead for themselves, and now I just have a bunch of drones. Like, that's the difference in leadership. Do you want drones that never do anything without your purview or say so?
No.
Or do you want people that make rational wins for the company and occasionally make mistakes?
No.
That sounds like a winning business model. We should try it. Yeah, no, it's basically, Gandalf is basically, similar to Leela in Bender's Big Score. Does anyone mind if I take command? Nah, go for it. That's basically what he does. It's just like, just kicks his, or knocks him out and is like, all right, prepare to battle. Nope, go back to your post. We're doing this. So.
Yeah, but he's so much more like, he wants everybody else to. He's like, man, like, I'm whole. Like, as far as me and the universe go, I am there. I just went through
I already tried dying once, so I'm good to do that again.
Well, no, he explained it in the second one. He goes, I lived for 300 lifetimes between when you last saw me and now. And that's how he became Gandalf the White.
That's right.
So, like, as far as at peace, Buddha, Zen master, Gandalf's like,
he's a little bit closer than Corione and myself.
I'm the hero. I am a hero. Like, I know how to be a hero. I know what heroism is. I know what justice and honor are. Do any of you other people, trying to be heroic want a chance? I'll back you up if you do. You can hit him first.
Yeah.
And I'll be like, General, way to be. And he'll be like, sir, it's Lieutenant. He's like, not anymore, General. Like, Gandalf wants another person to stand up and take the leadership role, because taking that role changes you as a person if you let it. And that's why Gandalf stays away from it. It's not because he doesn't want to lead, it's because he doesn't need to learn to lead.
There's also another piece to it too, and that is, I mean, you got to remember that in Lord of the Rings, wizards are basically like angels sent down from on high, right? And he's got specific instructions
with only two eyes.
Well, yeah, sadly, right? Incidentally, I just showed my wife what biblical angels look like, and she was like, I'm intrigued and horrified at the same time. And I'm like, yeah, pretty much. But yeah,
that makes the reactions in the Bible more understandable now. You know, because I think they're just superhuman, or they look superhuman, and no, that's propaganda. Oh, okay.
Inside baseball and psychedelics, that's what a lot of things look like on DMT.
Yep.
I watched a lot of eyes open that aren't supposed to open.
Yeah, this is turning into another Rogue Council topic. Anyway, back to Lord of the Rings.
Yeah. So what the wizards are supposed to be is they're supposed to go down and like educate and guide and be there.
All right, real quick, let's hit this Arende fan mail.
Yeah.
Arende writes in, wizards should be teachers, educate others to reach their level, not rulers. That's selfish and and ultimately pointless.
Yeah, exactly. Arende, you've got it right. They're
not teachers. They're beacons. You're not supposed to spend tons of time following them, because then they're a leader. Teachers are leaders. They are the example, the pillar of what it means to achieve oneness with the universe. Well, and you can learn from them, but you shouldn't follow them because they're busy listening to the universe, doing the universe's bidding. And unless you want to be a side act to that, a part of that side journey, like, don't ask a wizard to teach you.
Along the journey.
Yeah, they're busy.
Yeah. So, you know, I mean, well, wizards should be busy doing wizard shit, right? It's like witches. Witches should be busy doing witch shit, and then if you happen to be like, oh, cool, I could learn something from here, then, you know, come along the way. I just happen to think that my witch shit is hanging out with you guys. I kind of like it there, so.
And we like having you here. You know, I never thought that I would host a pop culture show network with a witch.
How about a friend?
That's why we keep coming back, because that's what matters more.
Well, see, I bring that up because of the whole like the wizards, especially Tolkien's wizards, they are Buddha, they are Jesus, they are the one that knows what comes next and what comes before, and they're busy trying to guide the realms of man, the realms of elves, the realms of dwarves, and walk amongst them and help be the beacons. And that is an honorable mission, but it's also completely sacrificial. Like, Gandalf has tons of friends across the world, but he's always crossing the world, so he's always across the world from his friends. And that's not a simple life, and that's what Gandalf tries to like regularly show, because there are like Frodo wants to follow Gandalf to the ends and back, and Gandalf sends him to follow other men, other people like him, needing guidance, needing teammates, needing squads, needing companionship, because Gandalf doesn't need that, because Gandalf is one with the universe, and that's a lonely life, but some of us need to live it. And that's why I say that like he can't be the teacher, whereas Corion the Witch can be the teacher, because he can be a leader. He hasn't been called to be one with the universe and walk on the universe paths according to the universe and sacrifice everything else. But some people are. And that's lonely, but also like if you meet those wizards, give them love, not avarice or abatement. Like, be nice. And appreciate their suffering, because they can help you, but don't count on them, because they arrive precisely when they need to, and sometimes that's after you eat shit.
Yep. So now I will also say this, the Peter Jackson movies get a lot of flack for what seems like the infinite ending, right? Where it's like you feel like it should have ended 3 scenes ago, but there's another ending.
But wait, there's more.
Right. And oh god, that would be a great cut. Somebody needs to do a Billy Mays in between each of the endings.
Just a Billy Mays sales pitch for watching the whole Lord of the Rings.
Right. But you know,
wait, there's more.
Like... But, you know, I do feel like it was actually kind of justified in a lot of ways. Because this series had to tie up all the loose ends at the end of it, because it's designed to be the last of this great mythology that Tolkien's put together. So he has to tie up all those individual loose ends and explain why you're not going to get a sequel with the hobbits going on like one last ride kind of thing. Right? You know, we're not going to get Fear and Loathing in Hobbiton, right? We're not going to get,
which is too bad.
Oh, God, that would be fun with that. Them all.
Stallone like, as a Hobbit, the Hobbiton King,
right? You know,
the Shire King.
You know, where were you when the Halfling weed kicked in, right?
Yeah.
For me, that's the How Hobbit 2.
Yeah, right. You know.
No, for me, that's like the most like painful thing about big bad series. Like when a series starts out with a big bad at the beginning and progressively the big bad, like, you know for a fact it's gonna end with and then they lived happily ever after, or to some effect they lived nominal ever after. Like, if you go watch Game of Thrones after watching Lord of the Rings minus the dragons, that's what happened, you know, for the land of men, right? And so that idea of like the big bad just cutting all potential future to your universe, because like otherwise you end up with, we got to prequel this with the Rings of Sauron, and they don't make any sense. And that prequel's like, you know how it ends, but here's where it started. But didn't, because you also know where it started, because there was another prequel that already had to do that. And like, to me, it's like, writers need to get rid of the big bad, or don't make the big bad the most bad thing in the entirety of your universe. Instead, make the big bad of season 1.
Well,
Like,
no, okay. So let's take a look at the narrative structure here of the 3 movies real quick.
Well,
the first big bad we really run into.
I should rephrase that pitch real quick, though. The big bad, in terms of writing the amount of words written on a page, Tolkien definitely, obviously, wrote an intact universe. In terms of the screen, though,
well, hear me out.
It's 3 episodes of a 10-part series that would be phenomenal.
Right, but hear me out. The Fellowship of the Ring, the really nasty thing we run into, the thing that we're viewing as the bad, is the ring wraiths, right? I mean, yes, we know Sauron's there, but he's more like an existential threat, right?
Well, I mean more in terms of, like, once that bad is dead, there is no way you can tell me another one just showed up in season 2 or showed up in season 10, because then you run into the supernatural dilemma. Am I cutting out super hard again?
Yeah, I was cutting it too, so no. Yeah. But yeah, so my
both y'all's internet's crap.
The first movie. Yeah. The first one, I mean, really the biggest bad we dealt with was ring wraiths. The second movie, we move up to, like a more credible threat in Sauron, right? We now have to settle his hash. The third movie, we're dealing with the top dog, right? This isn't G.I. Joe where they're dealing with, like, incompetent Cobra Commander from day one who just kind of stays that way. No, we're going through the lieutenants, moving up the food chain, right?
Right, but you can only do that once in this universe,
right?
And that, like,
right,
that's
but you
what,
have
like,
to plan for that.
Even like retrying to do it. If you keep, that's what I'm saying is like that's why if you're an up and coming writer, as advice for future writers and future screenplay writers, especially, like, if you're gonna have a big bad, it's gotta be your series finale. It cannot be anywhere near your opener. Aside from maybe, like, if one of the characters in the opening scene is the one that's gonna character develop into the big bad, cool, that's fine. But make sure you like that's, to me, I feel like that's what the big bad trope causes. It is the fiend. It's the end of the story, end of all stories to come. They're never going to be as good, never going to be as high stakes, never going to be as emotionally convincing. So if you either just never have one, because there isn't one in real life, or you plan one for when you're like for me, it's in my 25-year plan. As far as my, like, the writings I want to write out, there is a big bad, but it's a twist. Like, I'm working on how to make sure the twist follows a through line, but it's about, yeah. No spoilers.
I mean,
Been working
like
on
I
this
said,
for too
I
long
think
for there to be spoilers on the ending.
Right, and I mean, even take a look at some of the other movies and whatnot we've discussed, right? Or the TV shows we discussed. Avatar: The Last Airbender literally has a big bad that is, an existential threat until probably the last 5 episodes.
Sorry, your audio's doing the thing
Avatar,
again.
No, you're good. Yeah, I'll mute after this one just to really jump in. But Avatar did it the right way, where not only was the big bad real from the jump and real at the beginning. In the beginning, like, there were, or 100 years ago, whatever. There's constantly that, like, reiteration.
Hold on. I can set you up for this one. I got you. Long ago, the four nations lived together in harmony. Then everything changed when the Fire Nation attacked. Only the Avatar, master of all the elements, could stop him. But when the world needed him most, he vanished. And that's all I'm saying.
Yes. Perfect. And that's... So, they also then give you the character that's supposed to fight him. And it is an insurmountable fight. It is impossible. Like, no matter how many elements he knows, there's no way he's running through an empire's worth of firebenders to knock on the firebender god's door and be like, King Sozin, stand down. Right?
Right.
At no episode, even all the way up to the very last battle, that is still not the pitch.
That's it.
And that's like, that's how you do a big bad.
That's it. Look, we can go on and on of textbook examples of how to write a really good big bad. And the key is to tease him along the way, or him or her along the way, but you don't deal with him until the very end. And then once you end, or then once you've dealt with him,
justify the distance.
That's it.
Always justify the distance. Like I like the movies where like the big bad is actually like a thief, and they're just way more cunning and they're faster than the main character. So like you're like, which one is the one that's actually the cause? And then it shows up and you're like, oh wait, I go back through and rewatch the whole thing. I see all the times he stole, plotted, manipulated, and I just wasn't listening. Oh, that's a good story. That's why I think the big bad is a very fun storytelling trope, but this is my example of why it hurts so bad. Because this was like, for me especially, as a coming of age child through this trilogy, as it released, I hit different mile markers in my life, and I hit puberty, I think, right after or before this one. And so for me, it was like, now where am I going? And then 10 years later, Game of Thrones season 1 drops, and I was nowhere near it again. Right? Like it really felt like taking a jump into the deep end, and I'm still falling, waiting for the deep end. Because that's like, that's how much fantasy was given, and then just cut right at the fall of like, I'm gonna be super into fantasy films, movies, all of it. I'm gonna be into fantasy, and then I just couldn't because there was an end.
But it's important for your stories to have an end and have a solid ending that somebody else can't like pick up and run with at the end of it, because unless you intend to carry on your series, which is a different animal entirely, you need finality, you need conclusion. Otherwise people are going to really get annoyed at your series, for lack of really get annoyed at your book,
and that's
right?
and that's what I felt this time around. I think it's like everybody kind of gets to pick their own ending after all of it. For me, I think the most relatable ending is when they're sitting in the bar after everything. Like my first actual deployment on a ship, when I went to a foreign country, my first experiences were Panama and Golfito, Costa Rica. Panama City is a dump. It's basically the Oakland of Central America. But there's lots of gambling and other Las Vegas family-themed, not really family-themed stuff as well. So, it was an experience to I specifically remember taking a cab back to the ship after a night out and just looking at all the ways that some of those folks were living. And then going to Costa Rica, which was even more poor, and just getting the culture shock. And then I remember I got back into Alameda, and I went back to my Coast Guard housing, and I'm sitting on the back porch, smoking a cigarette, and I'm thinking, wow, I was somewhere else in a totally different world, while the rest of these people, everyone's just going on about their lives. And so that's the scene that now sticks out the most to me, because it's like, you just go on that kind of an adventure and then you come back home where nobody gives a shit. And it's like, so that's different. And every subsequent trip after that, I mean, sure, I kind of had the same feeling getting back into normal life, but I had already experienced it once. It was just that realization of really how fortunate I was to live in such a great country as the United States, but also recognizing like the poor people that complain about being poor here. I mean, yes, we could all use it better, but at least you want to balance that out with taking stock of your situation and recognizing, look, it could also be worse. But that was the takeaway for that.
Parts of
yeah, we don't have time to get into this.
Equal to Panama.
Yeah.
But no, I understand what you're saying, because for me it was honestly, it felt a lot more along the lines of Lord of the Rings in terms of like going to Mount Doom, because I went and spent some time on the DMZ in South Korea, literally right at the foot of the Mount Doom of our known world, North Korea. And
at least one of several.
Well, I would say it's the one.
That was your Mount Doom experience.
Actually has a gate and a fence that's strictly enforced on at least one side.
Sorry, I shouldn't belittle your experience. My bad.
No, but I mean, in terms of our country, it is the only one that has a black gate. The DMZ, the 31st parallel.
Yep. Got it.
It's terrible. Yeah. Anyway, so like, I get the idea of like going on an adventure and nobody knowing like what the rest of the world is experiencing, but I also understand like going to the dark gates and realizing, oh, the weather's still normal. The air is still air. Like, and I can't shoot unless shot upon. I can't do anything about the tension.
Yeah.
And then just also then going back home and realizing
so
nobody knows that's how it's like.
Yeah. We'd like to thank everybody for watching tonight, and if you do like what we do here, please like, share, subscribe, get it out there, tell the world how much you love the Ryder Brothers. It really helps us out.
How much you love us.
We also appreciate though any little support you guys give, whether it's watching our videos now, later, in any time. We love doing this. We love talking content. We love bringing you guys a show. Anyone got any quick last minute things to say before we wrap it up?
Happy holidays, everybody.
Yes.
Already?
We will be back next week on the 27th for our Christmas Cringe special. We'll be doing a Christmas story, Christmas, and Jingle All the Way. So we hope to see you guys there for that. We totally understand if you don't want anything to do with us on the holidays. And then after that, we're actually going to go on break, so we will not have a stream on the 3rd. And we'll see you next week. This has been a presentation of the Ryder Brothers Tuesday Night Live Show. The Ryder Brothers, restoring respect